Hey everybody, welcome back to Norman Squad Sports, college sports podcast focused on Alabama athletics. I'm Dakota here with Brian Oakley, and we're just going to go ahead and get in this episode because there's been so much happening in this week. Of course, we had the SEC championship game, college football playoff, awards, some hirings, some firings, and some retirings. And we're just going to start with this SEC championship game if y'all want to bust it out.
Yeah, it was a great game. I was nervous there for a little while. Georgia really is hitting us in the mouth all game long, but just like you've seen a lot of Saban teams do throughout his tenure here at Alabama, they just really found a way to win the game. You got to give a lot of credit to Jalen Hurts. A lot of people were predicting him to transfer or either redshirt, but that shows some true character out there and really how to be a team player is what he did. And also, I think you got to give credit to Enos and Jalen because for the work he put in. But Jalen is clearly a much better passer than he was last season, and we wouldn't have won that game without him. We needed him to win it, and I think what the offense did at the end kind of overshadows what the defense also did at the end. But the defense had 6 straight stops against Georgia, which is pretty impressive because it seemed like there for about a 4 or 5 series run we couldn't stop them for anything. But just great job by everybody, especially towards the end of the game. I thought we played probably one of our worst games of the season, and I thought Georgia probably played their best game of the season, and we still ended up finding a way to win that game. That's a key factor to a championship team is finding ways to win games even when you're not playing your best.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was an amazing game, too. I feel like I was watching the exact same game back in January. It felt so similar. Same place, same team, same uniforms. One of our quarterbacks goes out. Our starter does. Our backup quarterback comes back and wins it. Amazing job by both teams. But like Brian said, it's a testament to how good really this team is to play one of our worst games of the year and still get the win.
Yeah, and I think in my opinion, I think there was more stress on this game because, the Tua injury, of course, and we know what Jalen is made of, and we know he could come back and, do what he does, but no one could have predicted that ending, and the fact that he had even less time to do it, and you add in, obviously, the injury, and there were just a couple times where I just looked and I said, we're losing this game. I mean, Tua has an early turnover, and you're like, okay, getting the jitters out. We had multiple drops. We were just making mistake after mistake, and then he goes down again. He has another interception, and you're just like, how are we going to pull this out? And everything came together at the right time and definitely worked out, and we cemented that spot in the playoff. The biggest play that really turned it around besides the field goal miss by Georgia was definitely that 4th and 11 play. And I've been thinking about it a lot. I still don't understand how you snap that football. You can call the play all you want. You have the timeouts. You can call it, and if it's covered, fake a snap or, try to draw them off, call a timeout, do whatever. But you do not snap that football at that point. You do something to get that. Either go into normal punt and call a timeout, but you do not give that ball to Justin Fields on 4th and 11.
Yeah, I think it's just a mistake by a young coach right there. It's obviously something they had worked on during the week, and I think Kirby probably had it in his mind that they were going to run that during the game, sometime during the game, no matter what. In my opinion, they said or they did run that play against Alabama in the 2012 SEC Championship game, and it worked. But I think, I read on Twitter by some Georgia guys that Justin Fields had not been on a punt team all year long, and they asked Christian Miller after they interviewed Christian Miller about the play after the game, and he said they knew something was up as soon as they saw Justin Fields on the field. So you gotta, it's an easy throw, so you gotta put somebody else out there to make that throw, and it was definitely a big turning point in the game to give the Alabama offense only half the field to work with. But you talk about plays of the game. If I had to pick one play of the game, it would be Jalen Hurts rolling to his right on 3rd down and throwing a deep pass to Waddle. Well, Waddle, kind of tiptoes the sideline. I thought he was throwing it away when he chunked it down the sideline, but it was a great throw and a great catch by Waddle, and it extended the drive and let us score. I believe that was for the drive on us to tie the game, I believe.
Yeah, and that's a play that Jalen doesn't make that play last year.
Oh,
that
yeah.
just shows his progression.
Definitely. Yeah, last year, Jalen, he's
Either
most
running
likely
or
he's
throwing out of bounds.
right. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I'm Kirby, I'm not taking that 4th and 11. But like obviously, I'm not getting paid the big bucks to make those kind of decisions. I think I don't understand why he wouldn't put his top 4 defense on that field because his defense has been playing lights out. I don't know.
Yeah, something like along with that fake punt, you never really understood why Georgia kept on putting Justin Fields in the game with the game that Jake Fromm was having that game. I mean, when you got a guy on fire like that, I just don't understand why you keep on putting Justin Fields in the game. And they tried to let him throw a pass for once. He ended up getting sacked, I think. I think he may have ran the ball once, but when your quarterback's having that much success, I just don't see the need to play another guy in there. But
it's kind of like basketball. Like whenever a guy has a hot hand, you kind of want to feed that guy and play through that guy. And whenever you take him out and put on the bench, it kind of cools the offense down and the momentum of the game. That's kind of how it felt.
Yeah, I think it goes on what you said about how Kirby had a game plan that he wanted to execute to a T. And the sign of a great coach is the ability to adapt. So, for example, national championship game last year, we didn't really plan to put Tua in, and then we put him in, and the plan is to have him exchange snaps with Jalen. And even though he wasn't, getting touchdowns at the beginning, we're like, okay, this is our best bet. We got to roll with it. And most coaches, I believe, would have said, okay, Fromm is our best bet. We got to roll with him. But I think it showed the inability for Kirby to adapt to what the game was giving him.
yeah, there's a lot of things that separate Saban from the rest of the pack, but one of them is his ability to adapt. He's not necessarily tied down to a defensive style and offensive style, but more of what fits his team and his personnel the best. I think a good example of that is when you look at LSU when Les Miles was there. He basically said, this is the kind of offense we're running and we're not going to change. And I think Saban's ability to adapt, especially you really saw the defense evolve. Really, it started that 2014 year was kind of the year from 2013 to 14 where we started trying to get a smaller and quicker and faster at every position instead of having, the bigger and, the bigger guys on the field out there. But, great job by the coaching staff, great job by the players. It was a great win.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right because think about the kind of defensive tackles we had in the past. Mount Cody, Jesse Williams, Marcel Darius, and now look at our nose tackle. Less than 300 pounds, Quentin Williams. He just won the Outland Trophy, so that's crazy.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot about his adapting to – honestly, the game is going to adapt, and the fact that he's rolled with it. Every SEC coach or every SEC team is fired or had a coach retire or resign since he's been there. And obviously he's been there for a long time, but he is just growing and running with the times better than pretty much anybody else. But let's go ahead and move on because a lot's been happening this week. Let's just talk about for just a second Urban Meyer retiring, what your thoughts are and if it affects Ohio State moving forward.
Yeah, I think you could kind of see the writing on the wall 3 or 4 weeks ago. If you watched Ohio State play football, you just watch this guy on the sideline and, something just seems off about him. Just doesn't look right. And I don't remember what the exact problem was, but they said what his health issue was. And, the scandal that happened earlier in the season, it seemed like a lot of things were weighing on this guy. But some people were predicting it earlier in the season. I even said on a earlier podcast I thought that this would be his last season there. One person asked Urban Meyer in a press conference if he thought he'd ever coach again, and he said that's a complicated question. So I do think he'll be coaching again sometime in the future. Not sure where that will be, but I think you could kind of read the writing on the wall that this would be his last season at Ohio State.
Yeah, and Urban Meyer stepping down has already taken a little bit of a hit on recruiting, especially the 2020 class. I know that Ohio State has had a couple of 2020 guys decommit already because nowadays people commit to the head coach more than they commit to the program, which is probably not ideal, but it happens. And that took a hit. I think it helps that Ryan Day was promoted because he was an inside guy already and people are already familiar with him. So I think that helps maybe more like a damage control too, because of how crazy this year was, and he did such a good job stepping in for Urban Meyer in the beginning.
Yeah, he did. And if the health concerns are legitimate and it's a major threat to his health and life, then obviously none of this is like true. But there's just it seems as if it's what happened in Florida. And like I didn't want to say this on the podcast, but after seeing how other people are reporting this and talking as if he's going to get another job and how he's using this to transition out, I feel better saying it. And again, obviously, if it's a legitimate health concern and he needs to handle this, then go take care of your health. But I feel like he's trying to find a way to move on, and I can't tell. But one job that I heard that he might be considering maybe longer in the future might be USC. Getting out of the Big Ten, easier competition with a respected program, probably be a lot easier to make the playoff every single year. But there's a lot on his plate that he has to sort out before he'll get another job. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of coaches moving, obviously the biggest one that's hitting home in Alabama, Coach Locksley becoming the head coach back at his old school, Maryland. What y'all think about this and how it affects Bama?
Congratulations to Locksley on getting a head coaching job, well deserved. Many people inside the building of the Alabama football facility believe that Locksley probably ranks top 5 in Alabama recruiting coordinators that we've had. Was a great recruiter, and I thought he'd done a good job with the offense, which it'd have been pretty hard not to do a good job with this offense with all the talent he had out there. But nevertheless, I thought he did do a good job. As far as replacements, if I was a betting man, I think you got to bet Dan Enos being that guy. There's been some reports of Josh Gaddis possibly going to Maryland to be the offensive coordinator with Locksley. Bruce Feldman said today, he said a tweet that he said those reports were false, that nothing had been set in place yet. Another guy to watch out for is Hugh Freeze. He's waiting on something to happen because he has been offered some jobs. There was some speculation last weekend that he had accepted the Tennessee job, but apparently Tennessee offensive coordinator job, which that's not true at least yet. But right now, I think Dan Enos is probably the front runner, or like he would be the favorite to get the job. But I wouldn't count Hugh Freeze out. Saban wanted him last year, but the SEC office wouldn't allow it.
And yeah, like Bryant said, Locksley has done a great job for us recruiting. He's really locked down that Maryland area, and especially St. Francis High School, which is where we got a 5-star number 3 player in the 2018 class, Ayabi Anoma. And in the 2019 class, we have 2 guys from there, I think, coming, a 4-star lineman and a 4-star linebacker. And in the 2020 class, we have a 5-star outside linebacker coming in, and that's just really crazy because it's all from that same school. And so you got to think about how much is that going to affect the recruiting out that way.
Yeah, definitely. Coach Locks has done a lot for us, but I'm not a huge fan of Freeze coming if he's there. I believe that Freeze, if he was going to come to Alabama before, it was probably more going to be like an offensive analyst than an offensive coordinator, and that got shot down because his standing in the SEC wasn't that high at the time. I would much rather like Dan Enos. And speaking of Dan Enos, he's actually been talked about, like you said, to go take the Tennessee offensive coordinator position. I've heard that at least he's getting an interview there. So what are y'all's thoughts on that? And do you think he's more important to keep than it would have been to keep Locksley?
That's a tough question, but my preference personally, I think if there's a way you can get both of the guys between Freeze and Enos on staff, I think that's what you try to do. We've seen Enos be a great quarterback coach. Is the way he's developed Jalen. Really, the way you've seen that, you don't know how he's going to be as a play caller, but I would really like to see us roll the dice with Freeze. Because Alabama did want him for an on-field position last year. Now, it wasn't said whether it had been a coordinator spot, maybe just a receiver coach. But he did want Alabama did want to have an on-field position. But Locksley was valuable, but especially as a recruiter. But Saban's lost tons of assistants, so I don't really expect it to take that much of a toll.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Enos. He's done a great job coaching the quarterbacks this year. I think the only thing you don't know is how is he going to do calling plays, and I think that's your only hesitation about pulling the trigger as him as the OC.
Yeah, definitely. But another thing that I'm hoping Alabama can get is sustainability, because we're churning through assistant coaches like their butter, and maybe if he's a little bit younger, just the fact that I don't think people are going to be looking at him as early as they wanted, like Locksley or Pruitt or other assistant coaches. But then again, they might just be like, okay, we need an offensive-minded guy. Alabama offensive coordinator, let's take him, honestly.
Yeah, losing assistants is never a good thing, and that's not what I'm about to say right here. But one thing that you can look at in a positive way is when you're bringing in new assistants, you're also bringing in new ideas. You're bringing in younger guys, and you're also there's a chance you look at guys like Pete Golden coming in, Mike Locksley, Butch Jones. These are guys that have historically they really haven't won places they've been. So these guys, they're really not getting complacent themselves assistants because they haven't won a championship before, as offensive coordinator or whatever. But it's never a good thing to lose, especially in recruiting. It can hurt you sometimes. But Saban always does a good job of replacing.
Definitely. Let's go ahead and head in. One more thing from the week. Mack Wilson, of course, we all follow him on Twitter. He's pretty active on Twitter. And after Devin White won, it was the Butkus Award, right? Mm-hmm. Devin White won the Butkus Award. Mack Wilson puts a picture of him together congratulating him and said, I'm coming after it next year. Now, to win the Butkus Award next year, you have to be on a college team next year, which means you cannot declare for the NFL draft. Do you think that this is an actual projection that he's staying, or do you think it was just a slip of words, or do you think we all thought going into this season that he was going to declare pro? Do you think differently from that tweet alone?
I don't really think this is him announcing that he's coming back. It's probably more of a slip of words. But I do think that he's going to end up coming back. But I don't know. These guys are hard to read. You don't know what their motives are as far as are they? He may not care. He may not care about school, or he may hate school. He may just want to get out. I mean, if he goes, he'll get drafted somewhere. But he can obviously improve his draft stock a lot if he comes back.
Yeah, I think his expectations, he didn't meet those this year. Maybe played a little slower than he had wanted to. He could if he got some more X's and O's under his belt, one more year in the program, never hurt an Alabama player. He could definitely benefit, I think, from coming back, and I think he probably will.
Yeah, I went in thinking that he was gonna declare. I went into the past couple of weeks thinking he's gonna declare. He's probably gonna be a late first round, early second round prospect. Thing is, there's a lot of good linebackers this year. Of course, there's many on Alabama's team alone, and then you also add in, Devin White, who won the Butkus, and there's so many options at linebacker this year. And I think there's fewer options at linebacker next year in the draft, but it's a better draft class overall. So you might move from, let's say, the fourth best linebacker to the second best linebacker, but you might also move from 25th on draft boards to 40th on draft boards, because it's going to be a better class for skill players and offensive minds. But if there's a team out there next year who needs a linebacker, they're going to go after Mack Wilson. So it might help him. And even if it's not him finding a higher draft position, he might not be in the top 10 because he's definitely not going to be there this year. It might be more of there's going to be a team that really wants and needs him that gets him, as opposed to someone being like, okay, we have a second round pick. We could use extra linebacker help. We'll just pick him up. So
yeah, he's a guy. He's definitely got all the talent in the world. You've probably heard Gary Danielson. He said on at least once or twice, this is the most athletic guy on Alabama's defense, and he's not lying. When you looked at the Hail Mary, when Georgia was in the last Hail Mary of the game, they had Mack Wilson standing in the back of the end zone. He jumps like a freak, very athletic guy, and I think he probably should come back, but that's not nothing bad. You look at guys like Rashaan Evans came back, C.J. Mosley came back for his senior year, so that's not saying that he couldn't go to the NFL and play this year, but I think he'd probably earn us some extra money if he would come back and give the NFL another year of tape to watch him.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting because obviously draft grades are coming in for all these guys, and it'll be very interesting to see when he opens it, because Alabama players obviously open it after the
Right.
playoffs. It'll be interesting to see if that affects his decision. It's really hard to turn down a first-round grade and go back to school and risk it for another year.
Yeah, and for our Bama in the NFL segment, Derrick Henry scored his 3rd touchdown of the night. So
Seriously? We're recording during the game right now. Of course, he had like a short run or like an intermediate run, and then he tied NFL record, 99-yard rush. It's gonna make Marshawn Lynch blush, honestly. And then another thing, Ronnie Harrison got his first interception, and Rashawn Evans has been playing relatively well. He stopped Leonard Fournette, had some LSU Alabama nostalgia on that play. But definitely good for Alabama in the NFL this Thursday night. So let's go ahead and talk about awards, because the award show did just wrap up. If one of y'all want to wrap through what Alabama won tonight.
Yeah, Bama really did take home most of the hardware tonight. Tua got the
Maxwell and the Walter Camp Award.
Yeah, for the best player in the nation. Quinnen Williams was up for the Outland Trophy, and it was Jonah Williams, who also plays for Alabama. He's an offensive tackle. And then Christian Wilkins. The Outland Trophy is a trophy for the best interior lineman in college football, and Quinnen Williams took that one home. And for the Biletnikoff Award is the best wide receiver in the nation, and Jerry Jeudy took that one home. So a lot of hardware coming back to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, honestly, I don't understand the Outland Trophy, because it's best interior lineman, which basically means interior D lineman or anywhere on the offensive line. I don't get that, because obviously Jonah Williams, he plays tackle, and that's not interior line. It's the last person on the line. But I don't think they really put a lot of thought into the process.
Yeah, I don't really know how that gets.
Definitely, there's plenty of Alabama people getting some respect tonight, interview after interview, and they're all doing really well. So really proud of them. And there's of course one more award. If you ask my girlfriend, it was tonight, but no, it's Saturday. The Heisman, obviously, two of the finalists there. Do y'all think he still has a chance to win it? And if so, how big?
Yeah, I think he definitely has a chance to win it. The odds are in Kyler Murray's favor. They both. I mean, I'm not gonna necessarily be that fan that is gonna say Kyler Murray didn't deserve it. But I think a lot of people are really just writing Tua off because of the last game he had. But you got to look at the whole body of work. And I think for probably 11 or 12 of the 14 weeks of college football that we've had, that Tua has been the best quarterback. Numbers are one thing, but you got to take into account that the defenses, the opponents, how many snaps they were played, or how many snaps that each player played. All three guys had an incredible season, including Dwayne Haskins, the dude leads the nation in, I believe, passing touchdowns and passing yards. So they're all three great quarterbacks, and it'll be interesting to see who wins.
They all three are great quarterbacks. I think it's definitely a Kyler Tua race. If you asked me before the SEC championship game, I would have said, oh yeah, Tua's definitely got this one in the bag. But how the Big 12 championship game and the SEC championship game unfolded really closed that gap a lot. And a lot of people think Kyler is going to win the Heisman. I think it's so close. You could flip a coin. Kyler, I think, is trending a little bit right now, but it's going to be a toss-up.
Yeah, and a lot of people thought like you did about when going into the game that there's nothing Tua could do to lose it. And 12% of the voters voted before the SEC championship games even started. And I believe, I would have to guess, out of that 12%, I guess he got about 10 total percentage points of that at least. Because there's no way you go into that game knowing that no matter what happens, Kyler's going to win the Heisman. So that has to be just people like Baker Mayfield who are going to vote for him nonetheless. So they're just going to put their ballot in. And looking more into the game, obviously his first half stats were pretty rough, but I think there were 4 drops in the first half. There was a couple passes that he was in bad situations he just shouldn't have thrown. He was playing on one knee and 0 ankles by the end of the game. And
Tua, he should have started out 7 of 10 for 2 touchdowns. And one interception too. I mean, not leaving that off, but he should have started out 7 of 10 for 2 touchdowns. The drops hurt him a lot, but
That's how
but
the
that
game
one
goes.
game really shouldn't define his season right there. He played. I thought he played well against LSU. Three for 295 yards against a secondary that has 2 first-round picks. I thought he played maybe his best game of the season against Auburn. Played really well against A&M, who also has one of the best defenses in college football. You can look at those Mississippi State games where he left early with an injury and look at the Georgia game, and those are 2 off-par games for Tua, but the rest of it, he was just incredible.
Oh, yeah, he was. And the Heisman's really become, though, a November award. Whoever does the best in November usually gets the award. So, and Kyler's played better this past month. So
Yeah.
that's
Now,
the reason that I think.
Even if it was just Remember November, I still think Tua would have a chance. But this year, I think it's going to be Remember December, and it's all going to be about the the conference championship game, and that's really going to hurt him. But we'll still have to wait and see.
What's really going to help Tua out is by the year 2025 when there is no longer a conference championship game and he just wins it with 12 games.
Yeah, for real. Because he would have won it, I feel like, if conference championship games did not exist.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But that's how it goes sometimes. Okay, now let's transition. Of course, obviously the biggest thing that happened was playoff. We got the rankings in. Georgia fell to number 5. Oklahoma slid in their place. Do y'all think they got it right? And a lot of people have talked about that the playoff should expand to 6 or 8. I've even heard 16-team playoff. Obviously, none of us think that should happen. So if y'all want to talk about those real quick.
It's really up for debate where they got it right. I think the 4 most deserving teams probably got in. I don't think they got the 4 best teams in. After watching Georgia play this past weekend, I don't see how you could say they're not one of the best 4 teams. I just don't simply see how you could possibly say that. But I think they kind of chose the easy way out and put a conference champion in there. But you look at Oklahoma, and they got the 90th best defense in college football this season. That's the worst to ever make the college football playoff. The second worst defense to ever make the college football playoff was last year's Oklahoma's defense. But they were I think they may have been in the top 50. They were around that 50 area. But they were a lot better than this year's Oklahoma defense. But but Oklahoma will get a chance to go out there and prove some people like me wrong on the field that that they didn't deserve to be in the top 4. But we'll see what happens.
I agree with you that probably the 4 most deserving teams got in, but I do think that Georgia is definitely one of the best 4 teams in the country, and they showed that on Saturday because they almost beat the number 1 team in the country. I think you can definitely say that the best 6 teams are top 6, and one thing so you could, oh my gosh, I think it'd be a good idea to eliminate the conference championships. Go 1-2, get a bye week. 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5, and then the lowest seed plays number 1, and the next lowest seed plays number 2. That eliminates one more game for injuries. You get straight into the playoffs, and the better teams are more seeded towards the top because Ohio State got to play Northwestern. Clemson got to play Pitt, and then we start playing the number 4 team in the nation, and I just think it's a more efficient system.
See, my thought process as a logical thought, thinker and stuff, that makes sense. As an Alabama fan, we get in every year, and every year except one, we make the championship game. So anything that's going to make it harder and put better teams in there and guarantee that the 4 best are there, as long as they know we're one of them, I'm kind of cool with it, if I'm going to be straight up honest.
Oh, yeah. I agree. As long as we're getting in, I don't care. I'm just trying to make sure that there's a better chance that Bama gets in. The more teams.
Well, as of right now, we have a 100% chance every single year. So,
I mean, we're 5 for 5 right now, so
I mean, let's say
percentage.
that Hail Mary pass at the end of the game somehow got completed. Alabama's going to be number 4 in that. There's no way that they would have let us not play.
Yeah.
After that game,
4-3
we
at
played
least.
so well, but I mean, it was such a good game, and it sucks for Georgia. But another thing that I think other conferences might do, especially the Big Ten, is transition from 2 divisions to keep the divisions, figure out who you're going to play, but then take the 2 best teams.
Can we pause for a moment? Derrick Henry scored his 4th
Oh
touchdown
my
of the night.
Oh, I wish I had him on fantasy this week. Oh, God. I don't have him on my team, but I wish I would have traded for him.
That's insane.
How many yards was it?
It looked to be about 40 maybe.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
God.
It was
Hold
definitely a longer run.
That's...
You may have to edit some of this stuff out of the podcast.
No, let's just roll with it, honestly. So
It was actually longer than 50. It was like 50, it was right around 50. But they were
That's
behind
nice.
midfield, so.
That's insane.
That's nice.
Derrick Henry's having a night.
But yeah. All right. So we're going to ask y'all, if you're listening right now, go to the iTunes review, give us a 5-star rating, and while you're there, make a comment as to what you would have done about the playoff. If you would have changed the top 4 teams to get in, if you would have changed the structure, whatever you want to say, we'd love to hear what you have to say. So put it out there. And let's go ahead and go into these bowl games because obviously, college football playoff, it's amazing and stuff, but there's still a lot of good bowl games. And as long as, juniors and seniors aren't, preparing for the NFL, there's going to be plenty of good teams to watch. Starting out, obviously, probably the biggest one for at least the SEC, LSU versus UCF. And I know one of LSU's players has decided to go ahead and get ready for the NFL draft. I think that's a good idea if you're not playing in the playoff. Go ahead and, keep yourself from getting hurt. I heard he has a daughter, and, if he's going to risk millions of dollars if he has, like, a knee injury, no reason to worry about that. But LSU still has a lot of people coming back, and it's going to be a really good game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see UCF. They're probably going to get their first loss in like 26, 25 games, especially without Mackenzie Milton at quarterback. I just can't – because they had to come behind to beat Memphis, so I don't see UCF pulling this one out, especially against LSU's defense.
Yeah, this will definitely be a game I'm going for LSU. You just kind of get tired of hearing the UCF people talk about it. And what I would say to you is that if you want to get in the playoff, you schedule tougher teams than what you're scheduling right now. Because you look at the strength of schedule ranking in UFC's, below 100. And I don't have a problem with you getting in the playoff if you schedule, Power 5 teams. But, as long as you schedule the way you are right now, you're not getting in. And I'm not saying UCF isn't a good team.
I believe they play Stanford next season.
Stanford?
I'm pretty sure I saw that. Didn't I see that? They play someone who's in the Power 5. Now, they had, one, relatively big Power 5 game. Someone in the ACC, I forget who. But it got rained out, or that was when, I believe, the Hurricanes were coming through, so they didn't get to play it. But I think the FCS should have their
The group of 5?
Yeah, sorry, the group of 5. I think they should have their own playoff.
I think that would definitely be interesting. I'm always for more football. It would be nice to watch a playoff. Let me reword that. It would be cool to watch a playoff that you don't have to stress about.
Exactly.
For once. But I would rather be stressing about a playoff than not be stressing about one if we're talking about the normal college football playoff.
I mean, to be honest, we didn't stress for the first 12 games.
Yeah.
So.
It's like you add up all the stress other teams have, and then you put it all in 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
I was talking to some people that I know, and they were like, why are you talking about how big this game was? This is like what a normal college football fan has to feel, worrying about they're going to lose. Like, I hate it that you almost lost 1 game this year. Sucks to suck. But anyway, speaking of teams that suck to suck, Auburn is playing Purdue in, I forget what the bowl game's called, honestly.
I don't know either, but this is a game that Auburn could really lose.
I'm rooting for it.
Purdue has a great offense.
Yeah. We tweeted, and follow Dorm Squad Sports Twitter, by the way, while you're out there. I tweeted from there, if Purdue wins this game, I am 100% okay with them claiming a national championship, if we're going to be honest. Like, UCF, it makes me mad, but Purdue, how can you root against Purdue, honestly? Like, they're not a real threat. They are just good enough to screw some stuff up in the Big Ten. And they're also, obviously Tyler Trent. That's one of the best college football stories this year. He won an award today at the award ceremony.
The Disney Award.
Yeah, the Disney Award. Like, there's no reason to not like what's happening for them this year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Rondell Moore is one of the best freshmen in the nation, too. He's had an explosive year. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Really reminds me of like how Jalen Waddle's been playing, like same kind of. I guess that's the best comparison I could think of right now.
Yeah, definitely playing really well. And a couple other big SEC games. Texas playing Georgia. I think Georgia should win that game. We're not going to make picks yet, but we're actually going to do a whole episode of just bowl game and college football playoff picks coming up, so make sure y'all stay tuned for that. But I think it'll still be a fun game to watch. And Florida playing Michigan, that's going to be a really tough one to pick, honestly. Because sometimes a good rule of thumb for me is just who wants to win more, like who has more to gain. And sometimes when you are so close to getting the college football playoff and you don't get it, then you kind of like, okay, like we didn't get our goal. This doesn't matter that much, aka Alabama in pretty much any Sugar Bowl they've ever played. So if Michigan doesn't come out ready to play, then Florida has a way to upset, but that's going to be a tough game.
I'd love to see our SEC teams whip up on any other conference, especially since it's not going to affect us.
Definitely. Now, one more thing before we talk about the playoff itself. Our top 5 this week, since now it doesn't matter who beats who. We don't have to root for special interests or something. We're just going to give you our personal top 5 teams to root for that aren't named the Alabama Crimson Tide. We didn't really put a lot of structure to this, so all of ours are completely different. We didn't do a draft or anything. But, Brian, if you want to go ahead and bust yours out.
Yeah, so my top 5 teams to root for that aren't the Alabama Crimson Tide, I think number 1, I'm going with whoever's playing Auburn. It's always a good team to root for. Number 2, anybody ranked ahead of us. You know, we always need teams ranked ahead of us to lose, especially if we're not in that top 4. So especially if we're not in the top 4, teams ranked ahead of us.
So literally no one this year.
Well, no one this year, except for anybody who's playing Auburn. So,
True.
3, you gotta cheer for the New York Yankees if you're a baseball fan. You love the New York Yankees. 4, Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron's a GOAT, enough said. 5, Tennessee Titans. Derrick Henry just scored 4 touchdowns. How can you not love a running back who scores 4 touchdowns in a game? So,
yeah, for real. All right, mine. I kept it all college football. I love other sports, but I don't really have any like specific teams that I dedicate a lot of focus on. I just usually watch how Bama players are doing and how good teams play. If there are 2 good teams playing pretty much any sport, I love to watch it. But I stuck with just college football. My number 1 was also whoever's playing Auburn. So boiler up for the next month. 2, I picked UAB just because they have one of the best stories in college football right now. 2 years ago, they didn't have a program, and they just won their conference championship. Absolutely, you love to see that kind of a turnaround, and, obviously it being in-state, so good for UAB. Number 3, I picked Texas, and I kind of root for teams that remind me a little bit of Alabama, but they're not good enough to beat Alabama. And then also teams that are just good enough to, screw some stuff up in the playoff or their own conference. So, like for Texas, obviously they beat Oklahoma this year, and they're just a good historic team to play, to watch. And 4, I picked Stanford. They like that ground and pound, how we used to play before we had a Hawaiian quarterback. And they are usually good enough to make sure the Pac-12 doesn't get anyone in, but they're not good enough to get in themselves. So if it eliminates a whole conference, that's awesome. Number 5, I had FAU. Obviously Lane Kiffin, and they're never going to do anything on the grand stage. So it's just always fun to hear. And he's always a good Twitter follow. And I also put an honorable mention in there because I just kind of went through this. I probably did in about like 40 seconds. But my honorable mention was Iowa. I think Iowa is they're one of those teams that plays like Alabama used to play. They're good enough. Obviously, they beat Ohio State 2 years ago. And they have probably one of the best traditions where you wave to the Children's Hospital from the stadium. And when they started that last year, it's one of those things that, like, you can't root against them. You can't openly hate the Iowa Hawkeyes. So that's mine.
Yeah. Okay. So my number 1 is whoever will help Alabama. So basically, whoever's ranked ahead of us or closely behind us. I'm just like whoever can give us the most cushion. And then really my number 2 is whoever plays Ohio State or Oklahoma because you can't really see them lose enough. My number 3 is UAB. I like that story, how they got their football team dismantled and then built it back up, and they won their conference championship this year. That's just really great. My number 4 is Tennessee, mostly all because of Jeremy Pruitt. But like I know a lot of like old people give me some crap about that because Tennessee used to be like our biggest rival, but ever since I can remember, we've beaten them. So I don't really have anything against Tennessee. It's like it's having something against the Citadel. We beat them every year. I mean, every time we play them. So
True.
I don't really know. And then since Brian included his top pro teams, I'm going to include mine. I like the Braves, the Saints, and the Celtics. So
Yeah, and like I said, like I don't really feel like there's just one team. Like as long as it's good basketball or good football. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but if it's just a good game, and I'll watch the championship of anything. I'll watch the national championship of lacrosse. Like I don't even care if it's just good athletics. I'm down. And full disclosure, when I was a kid, probably until I was about like 7 or 8, I was a Tennessee fan because the family that babysat me before I started school, they were all diehard Tennessee fans, and they were the ones that introduced me to sports. And their son, he was like, right in high school age right at the time, and he had one of the older NCAA football games. I think it was the one with I don't even remember, but it was like in the 6, 07, because I went there a lot. It was one of the older ones, and I remember just watching him play and playing with him, and he always picked Tennessee. And same thing with like NCAA basketball, and he always picked Tennessee. So it was just, and they bought me Tennessee gear, so I just rooted for them until I really found my way. But just putting full disclosure out there. We might have to cut that. Anyway, so now let's talk about the college football playoff. Which game do you think is a bigger, better game? Don't include your picks because, like we said, we're keeping all those on our episode next week, so make sure you stay tuned, subscribe to make sure you get that one. But which game do you think is a better game?
I'm going to go with the Bama-Oklahoma game. I know our defense is really good, but I also know that Oklahoma's offense is really good, especially if Marquise Brown is going to be available because he's one of their – he probably is their best receiver and accounts for a lot of their yards and catches and stuff. So I think it's going to be a very good game if our defense can't performs like they did against Georgia.
I'm going to say Clemson Notre Dame. I think a lot of people are really writing Notre Dame off too much. I'm not saying that they will beat Clemson, but I think that people need to understand this isn't the Notre Dame team that it was in 2012. This team's better than that team was, and Clemson, they look good, on the hoof, but my only concern is that they just haven't played anybody. Really, A&M's been their toughest game. A&M was probably Alabama's 4th, 5th toughest game of the season. So, and Alabama still handled them by 3 touchdowns. Clemson was lucky to get out of that game. If they wouldn't have had Kelly Bryant, they probably wouldn't have won that game. So, I think that game's more interesting than people are giving it credit for.
Okay, we kind of had to interrupt right there. Someone randomly just came to our room, and it was very interesting. But we're just going to act like that didn't happen any, and we're going to keep on going. So, so going into the Clemson-Notre Dame game, I would love it if Notre Dame could find a way to upset them and avoid the Clemson-Alabama rematch. Y'all might be able to hear them in the background, but we're just going to block it out. So if they could avoid the rematch and instead get a Notre Dame-Alabama rematch, I think that'd be really interesting if we could find a way to make that happen. Of course, we have to keep up on our end of the bargain and handle Oklahoma.
Right. I think if you're Alabama, you'd rather play Notre Dame. Anytime you can avoid facing that Clemson defensive line, and Clemson they have a very explosive offense. Travis Etienne, great running back. Lawrence, he's made some strides since the beginning of the season, and also Notre Dame just kind of plays more of that pro style kind of offense. Which Alabama really does a great job of stopping. So I think both the games will be interesting though. You're really excited to see Kyler Murray go up against a good defense and really just two of the best offenses in college football go up against each other in Alabama and Oklahoma. And Yeah, but if I'd, I'm not going to make a pick, but, the favorites in the two games are definitely Alabama and Clemson.
No doubt.
Oh yeah, I mean it's also hard to beat somebody so many times when you play them so much. Like obviously we beat Georgia twice in a row, but we played Clemson 15, beat them. They beat us in 16. We beat them in 17. So I'm hoping that the pattern does not continue because that just shows you how hard it is to beat somebody, especially a great team like Clemson, consecutively.
Yeah, and going into the Alabama-Oklahoma game, if Tua plays, I'm not concerned at all. I think Jalen can do his best if he's in that scenario, but just the way that their defense, specifically their secondary, has played the past few games, I'm not that concerned with Tua going up against them. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Okay, so that wraps up this episode of Dorm Squad Sports. So make sure that y'all subscribe on Twitter, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, give that 5-star rating, comment how you think that we should change the playoff and if the playoff committee got it right. Just make sure you just stay active and keep in touch with us. And to the girl who walked into our dorm just now, I think your name might have been Anna. I don't remember, but your 19th birthday is today on Thursday. So happy birthday, Anna, or whoever it may be. And y'all have a good week, and it's not a game day, but just have a good week.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.